The New Orleans Saints get a slew of players back ahead of their Week 17 matchup with the Carolina Panthers. What will they do without Marcus Williams, who has been added to the COVID reserve list? And Julian Council is here to help break down the Saints and Panthers matchup for this Sunday. We've got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering the New Orleans Saints. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that we're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube as well. I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, Canal Street Chronicles, Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. Now, you might notice things are a little bit different here coming into this crossover Thursday edition. Usually we do the entire episode with our co-hosts from across the network. This week it's going to be Julian Council of Locked On Panthers at Julian Council on Twitter. But after we were done recording, some big news hit for the New Orleans Saints. 12 players coming off the COVID reserve list, including some key names. So I wanted to make sure that I updated you with all of that. And of course, one name being added to that list as well, because, we just can't have nice things, unfortunately. So we're going to talk through that news. Then we're going to get to sort of in our second and third blocks, our conversation with Julian Council, where I had some questions with him. And then we ended up going over keys to victory and some predictions. Now, there are going to be some things that are mentioned in the keys to victory that are a little bit, not necessarily outdated, but that I kind of hedged just in case some things didn't happen that did happen. And one of those big things that did happen that you're going to hear me talk about is how important it is for the New Orleans Saints to get some key defenders back like Demario Davis and Kwon Alexander. Well, as of Wednesday afternoon, the Saints did exactly that. They got both Kwon Alexander and Demario Davis back off of the COVID reserve list. They also got quarterbacks Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian, so expect Taysom Hill to be the starting quarterback up against the Carolina Panthers. They also got back linebacker Cade Ellis and Pro Bowl special teamer JT Gray. So special teams looks like it's on its way back. They got back some offensive linemen that serve in terms of rotational and reserve roles in Jordan Mills and James Carpenter. And they also returned Christian Ringo, a key piece on the defensive line, as an interior defender that they like to consistently rotate in as well. And they also brought back Adam Troutman, who will join fellow tight end Juwan Johnson, who returned to the team on Tuesday. So that's the big list of players that got back. So that's huge for New Orleans. That, just like we kind of talked about in the Wednesday episode, the things that you saw on Monday won't necessarily be replicable or applicable even to the next two games for the Saints against the Carolina Panthers and against the Atlanta Falcons, getting these key pieces, particularly over on the defensive side, back. But they did lose one more piece, and this is going to be the game of COVID, unfortunately, throughout the rest of the season as the Omarion continues to icebox everybody's playoff possibilities. You basically end up in a situation to where you might get some players back, but you're going to consistently see players being added to the list, and that's what happened to the New Orleans Saints with safety Marcus Williams, who has been one of the best defenders for this team so far this season. He, on Wednesday, has been added to the COVID reserve list. According to the current guidelines and the new guidelines that were adopted, it is now a 5-day quarantine, regardless of vaccination status, or 24 hours after symptoms stop arising, whichever is longer. The big piece here that I'm not sure that I quite understand is that Kwon Alexander was added on Monday, but yet comes off on Wednesday. So maybe it was perhaps a false positive. I have no idea. So I don't really understand what the NFL is doing here, but I'm also not surprised by what the NFL is doing here because they want their games to be played. So we'll see what happens with Marcus Williams. Based on Kwon Alexander's sort of situation, you could potentially see Marcus Williams come back, but based on what the guidelines are supposed to be in terms of what's been laid out, that would end up starting his 5-day clock on Friday, meaning that he would not be available, his 5-day clock on Thursday, meaning that he would not be available until Monday being the 5th day, Tuesday after that, whatever it's supposed to be. So the NFL, as always, confusing with its guidelines and its procedures, but we'll see exactly what happens with Marcus Williams. If Marcus Williams can't go, then expect PJ Williams, if he doesn't go on the COVID reserve list as well, to take Marcus Williams' deep safety role. Again, they really like playing PJ both in either of those safety spots. It's one of the reasons why they kept him around is because he can play all these different positions. So you would expect PJ Williams to be the deep safety there. He struggled in some cover 2 situations over the course of the season, but he played well last year when it came to single high situations that he had to step into with injuries for Marcus Williams and things like that being present over the last couple of seasons. So that's who I would expect to see back there. You could also keep an eye on potentially JT Gray getting some reps back there, depending upon how they want to rotate within their secondary. But that's a big deal because Sam Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback for Carolina. And when Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore hit their stride, it's hard to break it. So it's going to be up to the pass rush to limit and make sure that they can't hit that stride. I have very little faith in Sam Darnold, but you also don't want to open the door for them to get a little bit of a rhythm going during this game. And especially DJ Moore, who's always good for one big play against the New Orleans Saints. So that's going to be a big name to continue to watch, as well as some other remaining names that are still on the list, like Carl Granderson, who's been a key rotational defensive player, Ryan Ramczyk, who it wasn't listed on the injury report, so we kind of figured that he was going to be somebody that is on the COVID reserve list still. Be great to see him come back, but then you have the additional question of can he get back to practice and get back to the field as well. So that's where we are so far in terms of who is in, who is still currently out for the New Orleans Saints. So long way to go throughout the rest of this week to see who else gets added, who else comes off, who comes off that just got added, all of that. But that's where we are at this moment. All right, coming up next, we're going to dive into our crossover Thursday with Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. I had some questions for him about the Panthers. We're talking about the starting quarterback. We're talking about the offensive line that has struggled and the defense that has lost a ton of pieces so far this season and how that does shape up for a potential big win for the New Orleans Saints, who need this game and the next in order to get into the playoffs. If you want to get in on some action around the playoffs in terms of who makes it in, who makes it out, then I have a perfect place for you to go and check out. It's betonline.ag, the best, easiest, fastest place to get in on all of your bets and all of the sports action. The Saints and Carolina Panthers not yet added to the spreads for this week, but that may well be on the way now that you're seeing some of these players come back. So keep an eye out for that. But if you want to get in on everything else going around the NFL, the NBA, college football, or even just your favorite Vegas casino games, they have available for you over on betonline.ag. You can also check out their live betting module during games, get in on the action while the action is happening, which is always a ton of fun. But if it's your first time hitting up the website, make sure that you use the promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for a 50% welcome bonus. That is a 50% welcome bonus with the promo code LOCKEDON over at betonline.ag, where the game starts. All right, everybody, thank you so much for making Locked On Panthers, Locked On Saints your first listen of the day here, crossover Thursday. Julian Council at Julian Council on Twitter, myself, Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola. Julian got his questions in about these New Orleans Saints. I've got some questions about those Carolina Panthers. So let's go ahead and dive in here. Oh, I know you're excited. I know you're excited about it. So let's talk. Let's talk. So these Carolina Panthers right now, they put out an injury report, and there's a big time name on that list that I want to ask you about. Stephon Gilmore. Now, this was a huge acquisition for David Tepper, the Carolina Panthers. They were out there, they're making these moves and everything, trying to be this competitive team. And unfortunately, it all got derailed at some point during the season. But with Stephon Gilmore, what's the expectation for him this weekend and forward when it comes to the Carolina Panthers, as New Orleans Saints fans should have a vested interest in having an all-pro corner either in or not in their division?
Yeah, when Stephon came here, he told defensive coordinator Phil Snow, like, hey, give me until after the bye week and I'll be ready to go 100%. Because there's a lot of fans that were asking questions of why is Gilmore not playing more? And that's back when AJ Bouye was not on IR. And same thing with Dante Jackson was not on IR. And both those guys are done for the season. And of course, the first round rookie draft pick, JC Horn, who's been on IR and out for the season since that week 3 matchup against the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football. So Gilmore, the last couple of weeks, has been playing the majority of the snaps up until the third quarter on Sunday in the loss at home to Tampa, where he had a non-contact injury, which turned out to be a groin injury, and he was out for the rest of the game. And there were some concerns with 2 weeks left in the season, whether he'd play at all. And Matt Rule came out on Wednesday afternoon when speaking to the media and said that he does not expect Stephon Gilmore to play on Wednesday. And honestly, for me, if he's not going to play on Wednesday, he's not going to play on Sunday, I don't have much confidence he's going to play next week in another meaningless game against Tampa Bay on the road, especially for a guy who's upcoming free agency and who has an option where he wants to come back to Carolina. And I think maybe we see the last of Stephon Gilmore here in a Carolina Panthers uniform, as the Panthers are they got a lot of things they got to change this offseason, particularly on offense, to give anyone like a Gilmore confidence that them coming back would mean playoffs next season. So I honestly am sitting here thinking that Stephon Gilmore's probably played his last game as a Carolina Panther for a guy who only has about 3 years left in his career, probably wants to get the most money he can get possible, and also wants to go to a contender, which I don't know if Carolina contender into August next year.
Wow. Yeah. So it's definitely something to continue to watch in terms of the lifetime of that contract and his time in Carolina for New Orleans Saints fans. But to not have him on the field this week could be huge for the New Orleans offense that is still trying to figure out how to have an identity through the air. I don't know that they've figured that out yet. Speaking of having an identity through the air, Carolina Panthers dealing with a little bit of some quarterback shakeups themselves, right? 3 different quarterbacks who have played so far this season. Who's going to be the starting quarterback? Is it going to be Cam Newton? Are we going to see Sam Darnold again up against New Orleans? Or are we going to see another surprise appearance by PJ Walker?
Well, it won't be PJ Walker. He went on the COVID list on Wednesday.
Oh, that's right.
So unfortunately, PJ is actually the quarterback that the Panthers had stowed away. Just kind of told him, hey, stay away from the facility just in case something happens or we lose Cam or Sam Darnold. We're going to need you. That's not the case. They also cut Matt Barkley on Tuesday, and there's been some talk that maybe Matt Barkley, if he can pass through waivers, would come back for the Carolina Panthers, as they'll be in need possibly of a third quarterback on standby just in case something happens with Cam or Sam Darnold. But Sam Darnold will get to start. Matt Rule opened up his press conference on Wednesday and just went out and said it. He's smart, aware, dude, that people were asking me the first question that he was asked. And it's not surprising to anyone who's paid attention. Like, when Sam Darnold's been healthy this season, he's been the starting quarterback. And part of my frustration on Sunday when Cam started was like, okay, Sam's back. I get it. You didn't elevate him until Saturday, so it makes sense that maybe Cam's going to start. But if he's going to start, then just play Cam Newton. Don't have Cam play a couple series and then have Sam come in and on that third series, hit a long passing play with Shi Smith, get to the red zone, 1st and goal at the 10, then bring in Cam for 2 plays, and then ask Sam Darnold on 3rd and goal from the 9 to go out there and throw the ball. It doesn't make any sense to me. Right. What I felt like is if Sam Darnold's healthy and that's your guy, and he's the only quarterback on the roster right now who's under contract for 2022. So I understand that maybe you want to see more out of him the next 2 weeks. I believe they've said enough from him and they should have brought him here in the first place. But I get it. That's your guy. That's who you start. Fine. Start on Sunday. And honestly, we really shouldn't see Cam unless it's a 4th and goal situation at the goal line or it's a short yardage situation between the 20s. Other than that, it should be the Sam Darnold show. As much as fans don't like that, that's just kind of the way the situation is, where Matt Rule, that's his guy. He brought him in, and Cam is just only here mainly because of Scott Fitter, the general manager, calling, and also the owner, David Tepper, trying to fill some seats over the course of the weeks where Sam Darnold would be out. So it's going to be the Sam Darnold show this week, and Matt Rule doesn't want to talk about next week. But as long as he stays healthy, plays well enough, which I don't think it really matters, he'll probably still start on the road in Week 18 at Tampa.
So with Sam Darnold being the guy under center for the New Orleans Saints going up against them this weekend, I want to focus in on the offensive line a little bit because there have been some, dare I say, question marks around the offensive line so far for the Carolina Panthers. It's been sort of accentuated a little bit with the current ongoing COVID situation in Carolina. What's the latest on the offensive line as the Saints pass rush has really gotten better over the course of these last few games?
Yeah, you speak about the injury report. Cam Irving, who missed last week, also the starting left tackle, he's on IR. Well, he's not on IR. But he's been on IR before, but he's on injury report this week with a calf injury, something that's bothered him throughout the course of the season. So the expectation right now for me would be that Brady Christensen, who the rookie 3rd rounder out of BYU, who's an All-American left tackle last year, protecting Zach Wilson's blind side, someone who the fans have has been begging to play left tackle because the Carolina Panthers have not had a long-term answer at that position since Jordan Gross retired. 7-8 years ago, which is just ridiculous that we're sitting here still having this conversation. He played fairly well. He was the 2nd highest rated player on the offensive line against Tampa Bay in the loss, even though there's only one offensive lineman on this Panthers team you can trust, and that's Taylor Moton, who got the bag this past off season heading into the season. So looking at it right now, I feel like it's Moton again at right tackle, obviously. Left tackle will probably be Christian. Center, Elflein was on COVID last week. They had to go to their 3rd center, Sam Teckler, who started and actually played fairly well. He's now on the COVID list. But Elflein came off the COVID list on Wednesday, so he should be back and ready to go. At guard, I expect it to be John Miller at right guard and then Michael Jordan at left guard. Dennis Daly, who was on COVID list last week, is also off of that and available. So the Carolina Panthers, who have dealt with 11 different starting combinations on the offensive line this year, I'm not sure whether it's going to be number 12 or not. I can't keep track. There's been just so many guys who've come in and out. I'm not expecting much out of them, but I'm hoping to see Brady Christensen play well and show some good tape out there to where that could be a position that's answered. And the Carolina Panthers are only looking for some interior players heading to free agency this upcoming in a couple weeks, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It helps to have the bookends solved, left tackle and right tackle for sure, especially when you can get them out on the field, which has been a struggle for New Orleans, but hopefully something that Carolina can figure out. All right, finally, I want to flip over to the defensive side for Carolina. I know Shaq Thompson, my apologies, as well as Brian Burns added to the COVID reserve list early on this week. Yeah. What's the latest on the defense and sort of what the expectation is in terms of who can be out on the field this weekend?
Yeah, and let me pull up my notes here because there's so many dudes. Like there's 11 guys currently on COVID right now. COVID's like reserve / COVID-19 list for the Carolina Panthers. 2 of them, not thankfully, but I guess in a way, because they're human beings, so you want them to get better, obviously.
Of course.
But Matt Paradis, he's out for the season. So is Davion Nixon. So it's really only 9 players that might be available that are in COVID list. We got Hassan Reddick went up there on Wednesday. He's probably going to be out with the new protocols because the Wednesday counts as day 0. He wouldn't be able to test out really. Also, PJ Walker, he's not on defense, but he's going to be done. Brian Burns and Shaq Thompson, though, those 2 guys were among 6 who went on the list on Monday. And because of the way the protocols are, they can test out by Saturday and be available on Sunday, seeing as if they're vaccinated. I believe are the only players that one that is known to not be vaccinated for the Carolina Panthers was John Miller, who got COVID before week 1 and is probably still in the period where he doesn't even have to test after contracting the virus. So I don't think there's any concern there. There could be a possibility that Brian Burns and that Shaq Thompson play. If they don't, adding also Stephon Gilmore being out, and then you also have Justin Burris, who's a starting safety who was limited in practice. Same thing with Jermaine Carter Jr., the starting linebacker who's limited in practice. Carolina Panthers could be looking at a pretty skeleton defense, and a defense that's been pretty good throughout the season. You've seen guys like Yetur Gross-Matos, a second-round pick out of Penn State in 2020, really step up the last couple of weeks. They're going to need him. Jeremy Chin, he's been huge for the Panthers, over 100 tackles back-to-back years. The only guys who have done that in Carolina, I think, ever were in their first 2 years with John Beeson and Luke Kuechly, and that's Luke Kuechly's a future Hall of Famer, so that's pretty good company to be in. So I don't know who's going to be available, but right now you're looking at potentially 5, maybe 6 or 7 starters for the Panthers defense who might not be available on Sunday in New Orleans. So I'm sure the Saints are going to be weeping for them as they've had to deal with these COVID issues throughout the season, even early on in the season, that week 2 game. So there will be certainly no tears shed there in New Orleans.
Yeah, look, I think all of that, of course, is going to be key to watch for both of these teams in terms of navigating each team's COVID list, as there's not really a lot of assurance in terms of who is going to be available and who's not. So that'll be one thing that both of these teams are going to be navigating over the course of this week. But as we continue on with this Locked On crossover Thursday episode, Locked On Panthers, Locked On Saints, we're going to be talking more about keys to victory in this one, as well as making our predictions. So we got that coming up for you as we continue on here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, everybody, wrapping up this crossover Thursday edition. Carolina Panthers heading to New Orleans, the Big Easy, to take on the New Orleans Saints, the second meeting for these 2 teams this season. It's going to be 3:25 Central Time, 4:25 Eastern if you're watching out on the Seaboard, and we're going to have a lot of fun, I think, figuring out exactly what what both of these teams are going to look like by the time that we get there. So we've got Julian Council, myself, Ross Jackson, to get you ready for this one. So Julian, let's start with the traveling Panthers here. Outside of health, right, which is of course going to be big for both of these teams, what are some of the keys to victory for Carolina? What do they need to do to pull out a win here at the end of the season?
Yeah, I was about to give you a hard time for saying 3:25 Central Time, but also I
added it on for you.
No, it's fine. Central Time is actually God's time zone, so I'm totally fine with going with Central Time. Back when I lived in Nashville, I do miss Central Time zone, even though I'm an East Coast guy. Or I guess I'm a Southern guy, but the East Coast time is what I've thrived and lived on most of my life. But anywho, in terms of the keys to the Carolina Panthers, it's basically the same keys I've had throughout the entire season, like protect the passer and get after the passer, but really this week too, because I look at the offensive line. I look at it's probably Christian at left tackle, Mike Jordan at left guard, center is going to be Pat Elflein, right guard John Miller, and right tackle Taylor Moton. If the bookends can protect Sam Darnold and give him an opportunity, we might get to see something. And everyone knows how I feel about the acquisition of Sam Darnold and his future here in Carolina. Like, I don't think there should be one outside of him being the backup and holding a clipboard next season. And then if he's called upon for a week or two, you can actually win some games with him. But over the course of the season, he's proven that he's just not that guy. Maybe one day he will be. I just have a hard time believing that's going to finally happen for him. But I do want to see him succeed over the next couple of days, just for his sake and just for the sake of the organization, to get some good look at him and potentially be able to find a sucker in the offseason who they can flip him to. I don't know if there's any suckers out there, seeing as the Panthers are the only sucker that the Jets could get to trade for Sam Darnold, and they were betting against them, or they were, bidding against themselves or whatever. But I think Sam has an opportunity, though, on Sunday to actually play fairly well. Because he has at times. And DJ Moore, I think his production has kind of slipped over the last couple of weeks with not having Sam Darnold out there. Robbie Anderson, we've seen more of him over the last couple of weeks. I think him and Cam really had a really good rapport there. But they can get some sort of continuity, the three of those guys in the passing game. I would love to see that as well. And he's just got to make good decisions. He took care of the football at least on Sunday. He should have been picked off on the final play of the game. There's probably another opportunity where he should have got picked off. And that's kind of the story of Sam Darnold. But yeah, protecting Sam, and then him being able to feel comfortable, not get happy feet in the pocket. I think that's really the key to this offense having success. Like defensively, if they're going to be missing some of their star players, I don't really know what expectations I can have for them.
Right,
the COVID issues really aren't on the offensive side of the ball right now. So I'm hoping for that the offensive line can at least give Sam a chance to show us something over the next couple of weeks, as I want to see the guy succeed while he's here in Carolina. I just don't think long-term he's going to be the answer for an organization and an owner, and David Tepper, who said, like, if you got to be in constant pursuit of a Super Bowl quarterback, Sam Darnold's answered the question, he's not that guy. So if he's not that guy, and Cam Newton likely is not that good, then you need to go with somebody else. Should be the top priority for them heading for free agency here in a couple of weeks.
That makes a ton of sense. And I feel very similarly to Taysom Hill, right? You want to see him succeed in whatever role he's playing, but is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I think you would have to, it'd be a pretty far stretch to say that. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So I completely understand that line of thinking. For the New Orleans Saints over on the offensive side, I think the key to victory for them is just going to be about protecting the ball. Can't turn the ball over. You can't give up a pick six on the first possession. You know, unfortunately, we saw Ian Book do that. We've seen 3 starting quarterbacks out of 4 for the New Orleans Saints throw pick sixes so far this season. The only one who has it is the guy that everyone told us would, which was Jameis Winston. And he only had 4 interceptions on the season. And so I think, they have to protect the ball. They can't give Carolina extra possessions. You can't give Carolina the opportunity to be able to get into any kind of rhythm over on the offensive side, particularly in the passing game. The Saints passing defense has been very good so far. It particularly has improved since maybe the last 4 or 5 weeks, but you can't give them an opportunity to, those extra opportunities to hit that stride. On the defensive side, it's the flip side of what you mentioned, protecting the quarterback. Well, they have to get after the quarterback, right? They have to be able to put pressure on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold so far this season, 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions, 44.7% completion percentage when under pressure so far in terms of the entire season. When you look at the Saints in their last meeting with Carolina in week 2, they only put pressure on Sam Darnold. Let me check my notes here. On 8 dropbacks. That's not a lot.
No,
that's not a lot at all. And it was 19.5% of his dropbacks at that. So, and when they did put pressure on him, he was 2 of 5 and threw an interception, and he was sacked twice. So
the worst interception that we've seen all year.
It was pretty bad. So I think that, for the Saints and their defense, like the key here is, as Marcus Davenport and Cam Jordan have really sort of led a resurgence in the pass rush over the course of these last few games. Cam Jordan, 2 sacks in each of the last 2 games. He's now at 102.5 over the course of his career. Marcus Davenport has had 5 sacks, or had a sack in 5 of the last 6 games. The pressure numbers have been off the charts over the last 2 games. 17 pressures combined by both of these guys, including 6 sacks. So I think that you have to be able to capitalize on what you've been getting from the production there. And if you have a rookie starting at left tackle, you can't let the rookie come in and have a successful day, right? You have to be able to take advantage of that. And so far, Marcus Davenport's done a very good job. He's been bull rushing, pushing offensive linemen into quarterbacks, embarrassing offensive linemen. I mean, he had himself a field day up against Miami in Monday, one of the few bright spots of that loss. So I think it's got to be all about the pass rush for them and rattling Sam Darnold. That's got to be the big key on defense.
Yeah, and I think I go back to that week 2 matchup. I want to say that, early in that first half where the Panthers just dominated, but especially offensively, they didn't really have many issues against New Orleans. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until that third quarter, the second half, where traditionally Joe Brady just didn't really do a great job making adjustments, where Dennis Allen started seeing a bunch of pressure. And that's when you started seeing Sam Darnold kind of struggle and have that really bad interception that he had there late in that game. Mm-hmm. Now, those are the keys. And we're looking at this game. It's a must win, obviously, for New Orleans. They don't win, they're done. Carolina's already out of it at 5-10. I don't know how you feel about this, But for me, and just knowing how the Carolina Panthers have gone about these things in games where they don't need to win at all, this seems just perfectly primed for a game the Carolina Panthers are going to win and tick off the entire fan base. I think currently on tankathon.com, my favorite website, they have the 6 best. They're right now, they'd be 6 overall to in the NFL draft. And folks are looking at Evan Neal of Alabama or Charles Cross or maybe even a quarterback. They're in that top 10. I feel like Carolina's going to win this game and take off everybody in the city. And just like, I'm kind of thinking about it. It would be kind of funny. I honestly believe Sam Darnold's going to ball out after everything. After everyone booed him last week and everyone's mad about Sam, not everyone, a lot of people. Yeah. At least the Twitter faction are mad about Sam Darnold starting on Sunday. I feel like Sam Darnold's going to go out there, throw for 300 yards, have a huge day, and Carolina's going to like beat New Orleans. And then fans are like, wow, what the hell, dude? Like, I feel like Panthers are going to win this game. It's just a gut feeling.
Okay, so the last time we talked, what you mentioned was if there's going to be a game in which Carolina beats New Orleans, that had to be the one, right? With the coaching staff out and all those other things. My hope, again, there were so many question marks around all of this, right? We don't know who's going to be available. We don't know who's going to come off the list in time. Because even though it's 5 days for, regardless of vaccination status, symptoms presenting ends up being 24 hours after those symptoms are gone, being cleared by doctors, all these other things. So that becomes the big question mark around this, is how many of these players are actually going to be able to become available that missed last week's game for New Orleans. So my hope is that the majority of them are able to, in particular, the defensive leaders. They got Malcolm Jenkins back. I would love for them to get Demario Davis and Kwon Alexander back, and then a couple of those players over on the defensive line that they can rotate without having to send any other key players to the list, which is another key piece to all of this. We don't know exactly what's over or what's not. So provided all of those things happen.
There's the caveat.
Right. Yeah, I know. It feels so weird to like talk about it in this context, right? But provided all those things happen, the New Orleans Saints should win this game. It is a must win for them if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive going into a potential postseason appearance here for this team that I know wants to be there, that I know wants to win these games, and that I know has absolutely no desire to tank and play for draft positioning, right? They're still in this. They want to win this game. Sean Payton is not somebody that's ever going to put his team in a situation to where they are, losers in that situation, right? They want to go out there and they want to win. So I think that while they're still in the race here, this is enough of a must win, even though the Saints have been, for whatever reason, just not very good at home this season. I think that they can come out here and get this win at home against the Carolina Panthers. But a lot of things have to happen in terms of health for all of that to be the case. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. There's so much
to
of
play most of your games in Jacksonville moving forward. You played really well there as a home
I know,
game.
just keep playing in Florida. They're incredible in Florida. It's been wild. They're incredible in Florida. So I don't know. So this game, once again, has been moved. That's why I keep mentioning the time, 3:25 Central Time, 4:25 Eastern Time. If you are watching this one, do enjoy. Julian, always a pleasure to be able to chop it up with you, man.
Oh, my honor, Ross. It's been great. I will talk to you again in 2022. As I told my listeners, my final episode of the year. So
that's
really
right.
Great talking
That's
to you.
right.
Yeah, that's it. New Year's Eve. I told the folks, hey, don't expect anything out of me. I'm going to be gone. I'm busy.
I love it. Well, have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Stay safe, all of that. Everybody here that has tuned in for this crossover, thanks again, as always. Make a Locked On Panthers, Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On Bets, your boy Q handicapping expert, Lee Sterling. You know you got to make some of that holiday money back. They'll help you get it done. We appreciate you very much for joining us. Julian Council, you can follow on Twitter at Julian Council, myself on Twitter at Ross Jackson. Nola, enjoy the game this weekend. And looking forward to seeing how this one goes. We'll see what goes on with it. We appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in for another Locked On crossover episode here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.